Hello, concerned neighbors. Tracy Thrower Conyers here with a quick recap of last night's neighborhood council meeting where our CPU planners were presenting. First off, save the date. The big Pep Boys project is coming back to the Neighborhood Council Planning and Land Use Committee on October 15th. The agenda and supporting documents will be posted on the NC's website probably just a couple of days before the meeting. Find the link in the written newsletter and the show notes where I post this video. This project is huge and planned for the Pep Boys Del Taco lots at Manchester and La Tijera. Please plan on coming out. If the developers have scaled back their project and dropped their discretionary asks, there is nothing more we can do about the project, but I'm skeptical that this has occurred. So come on out and voice your displeasure about the scale of this project. Okay, on to last night's meeting. As I reported over the weekend, the city's community plan update team presented the latest draft of the community plan, or CPU, to the full neighborhood council last night. Since the current draft of the CPU has been out since March and fully discussed since that time, there really wasn't much new information provided in the presentation last night. The next draft is probably 4 to 6 months away, so this was a little bit of a nothing burger. But that there's a movement afoot among neighborhood councils to push for a pause on CPUs until the housing element is finalized in February. This makes sense because at present, we're kind of planning in a vacuum, not really knowing the implications of the Builder Incentive Program, also known as CHIP, on our community. Our own NC voted last night to support the pause plan based on a RAC motion. Links to that motion will be in the show notes with this video. Despite the fact there's no real new information in the draft plan itself, I did pick up a couple of nuggets from the planner's presentation. If you're totally new to the CPU idea, I will drop a link of an article that can bring you up to speed. That link will be in the show notes. Mentioned last night was a policy document underlying the plan. I can't tell if this policy plan or this policy document is set in stone or whether it's still open for revision. But I do know that nobody's talking about it. I have a feeling we need to take a deep dive into this document to see if there's anything lurking there that could hurt us. I see 8+ policies on the planning website, so I'm really not even sure what this policy document is that they were referring to in their slides last night. The planners did acknowledge that our plan area has carried a big load with the development of Playa Vista and Howard Hughes. The eastern portion of Playa Vista, closer to the freeway, is being planned as a hybrid industrial area. Think work-live units, which could be very cool. We'll have to see. The area around the metro station in Osage is being looked at for hybrid industrial also, but I'm not really clear on how that's going to mix with the R1 in the area. If anyone has studied either of these industrial area plans, drop me a note and let me know. I would also love to post any guest article that you'd care to write on the topic. Probably the most notable part of the presentation to me was that a mid-level planner on the team, and he spoke on behalf of the team, they were all there. He stated that we will get our unit allocation in the EIR process. If you've been following this process for a while, you will know that we've all been asking exactly how many units we need to plan for, and the planners have always denied knowing the answer to that question. We know that the Los Angeles goal for this 6th housing cycle is approximately 255,000 units. Really, it's about 500,000 units, but we already had about 245,000 zoned appropriately to meet our goal. We also know that other CPUs, notably the Hollywood Plan and the Downtown Los Angeles Plan, have already contributed approximately 200,000 units. So it's always been a very valid question to want to know how many units are left that might be allocated to our area. Most of the commitment theoretically should already be met. One problem I see on the horizon is that the planners keep saying that this CPU exercise is a 30-year planning document, but the current housing cycle only lasts through January 2031. I fear that city planning is going to try to shove more units down our throat, claiming that we're future-proofing past 2031. What's wrong with future-proofing? If we rezone huge swaths of land, we're going to get random density that might make zero sense for our infrastructure or no sense for the neighbors. But the real problem is that we're seeing a record outbound migration in Los Angeles, and our population growth is predicted to be flat through 2060, as in 2060. I'll drop a link to an article that discusses that, but naturally that has huge implications and should further cause us to ask who's going to live in all these units. Huge numbers of rezoned lots are just simply not justified. So the unit obligation has been a legitimate, ongoing question that the planners have failed to answer until last night. But will the EIR process be too late for us to fight if the number is just stupid? And why do we have to wait that long? Hearing this was notable. It was not comforting. The senior planner on the team last night stated that there are some soft projections in draft 2 from last summer. Does anybody care to dive in on that treasure hunt and let me know whether there are projections and what they might say? That would be awesome. Let me know. Next, I want to talk about new developments in our community since March when the last draft of the CPU dropped. So what's been happening in our community since March is extremely notable, not so much because of what's in the plan, but the fact that we're getting hit with some development implications that are outside the plan. The biggest development is that the ED1 developers have set their sights on our community and are lining up the projects big time. Approximately 1,400 units are already in process in a very tight area. If you're not familiar with ED1, I will drop a link to something describing it, but it is an executive directive issued by Mayor Bass on December 16, 2022, aiming to expedite project and funding approvals for 100% affordable units. That sounds like a good thing because we need more affordable units, but they're getting concentrated in Westchester in huge numbers. And expedite, in quotes, means the public can't interfere. The public never expedites anything because we want to hear the details. These units are coming and they're coming soon. They can be built very fast. And as far as I can tell, the CPU team is not adjusting their density plans with any consideration for the huge number of units that are already in the pipeline. There are also indications that another large number are in the pipeline for the pipeline. I'll drop links for you to look at. This is alarming, which I consider one notch above concerning. I mean, we're concerned about a lot here. These ED1 projects are alarming. Please share far and wide about these projects. We all need to be aware, and I know there are a lot of community members who still don't have a clue about any of this upzoning. So I also wanted to note a couple of interesting comments I heard from some of our council members last night. Dennis Miller expressed a concern that we will lose truly affordable units to build some not so affordable units. The planners maintain that the Resident Protection Ordinance will protect these tenants. We'll see. Julie Ross is concerned that LAWA is not at the table. The senior planner said that they are talking to LAWA, but it's pretty obvious that all of us need to be at the same table having the same conversation. Chip Malik was concerned about the fact that our LAX arterials are shared with other non-LA jurisdictions, and they need to be at the table also, specifically El Segundo/South Bay, Inglewood, and Culver City. Inglewood in particular has massive development plans abutting right up against Osage, and that's going to impact us big time. Teresa Torrance brought up a very interesting point that nobody has mentioned to date. She mentioned that we're in a tsunami evacuation zone. The city planner took note. I could tell that it really caught her attention. And she promised to consult the city's emergency management department on this topic. I think this is a really interesting point. Matt Lipschutz talked about the outbound migration numbers, Hat Tip Matt, and Alex Reynolds brought up the fact that we have a major university in our footprint and nobody has been discussing those traffic and housing implications. I should note that sometimes when we're talking about traffic implications or any kind of implications, they claim that that's going to be covered in the EIR. My concern is that the EIR comes very late in the process, and if that's when they're waiting to share some of these important details, we're going to have to scramble to make any noise if we're surprised by any of it. Okay, I want to also talk about some rumors in the community because those rumors were front and center last night. They have to stop. The first is that Westchester is being targeted for ED1 projects and nobody else is. There is no conspiracy to plaster Westchester with projects. The sad truth for us is that we have the cheapest land values on the west side and we're very close to the ocean. Cheap land is the only way for affordable unit developers to maximize their revenue. They're going to be limited in what they can charge for their units, whether they build those units in Brentwood or Westchester. So you tell me, which community is going to be cheaper for them to buy in? The conspiracy crap has got to stop. We're not being victimized in Westchester. Second, the planners have zero control over ED1 projects. They cannot limit the projects, and people going to meetings to demand that they do so simply do not understand the jurisdictions of the mayor versus city planning. They're not working together. They're working against us in the name of maximum density. But please stop asking the planners to limit the ED1 projects. They don't have any control over those. Third, there is a group in the community going from commercial lot to commercial lot, filming themselves, demanding that the city downzone the lots. Again, they don't understand that commercial lots in our plan area already are zoned for unlimited height. And our CPU planners and every other CPU team have been charged with upzoning us. Downzoning is simply not on the menu of options. In my opinion, we need to wait for the housing element and the builder incentives to be finalized before we can even start to have a conversation about our commercial lots. Fourth, I'm so tired of hearing claims that Brentwood and the Palisades are being protected, especially being protected by CD11. It's so silly. Yes, they are not in the midst of a CPU and therefore not being considered for that class of upzoning at this time. But they are not exempt from the housing element and they are not exempt from ED1, unless, of course, parts of those communities are in fire zones or another protected area. But it makes sense that it's not that anybody's favoring them. For God's sake, we all know that the fire zone along the ridge where the museum is, along the 405, we don't want density there. They've had more than one huge fire in recent years. It's just not about protecting the rich people. It's about what makes sense for building. And unfortunately, that's kind of us. Will those communities be less desirable to the developers? I really think they will for the ED1 projects from a cost perspective. And the housing element implications remain to be seen until after adoption. But we are not victims here in Westchester. We just need to get a grip on the reality and we need to make a plan to go forward instead of going out in the community and whining that we're somehow getting victimized. Please, further, those two communities will be next in line for community plan updates, although I suspect it will be a while because the West Side plans won't even be finalized until 2027. It's messy, and I wish that they were in the CPU process with us, but they're not. And that's simply the reality. I don't know that anybody in 2017 knew what kind of density mess we were going to get into, and if that's why they were left out at that time. But I don't think the planning team had the capacity to handle a bigger area. We're already moving in concert with Venice, West LA, Palms Mar Vista, and Del Rey. We're a big area. So after all that, I want to talk about a breath of fresh air. There is one breath of fresh air in these otherwise suffocating topics. Corey Burkett, a member of the Concerned Alliance, made a presentation at the last Neighborhood Council Community Plan Update Ad Hoc Committee. And at that time, she floated the idea of a special restricted zone for us in light of the ED1 implications and our role as the gateway to LAX. This idea is in early exploration stages, but it shows promise. I'm optimistic, and I thank Corey for her out-of-box thinking. She has been a tireless warrior in our CPU fight on behalf of our community. So that's it for today. I will be getting back to you as events unfold. Probably the next big fight is CHIP at the City Council's Plum Committee, and after that will be the full City Council vote. And at that time, it will be law. There is a state mandate that the housing element be adopted no later than the middle of February. So with the holidays looming, there isn't much time left. But I also think that once the housing element with the CHIP ordinance is finalized, some other things will become clearer for us as we plan our community going forward. I want to give you a quick update to the recent legislative review I shared. The deadline for the governor to sign the bills was on Monday, the 30th, and sadly, he signed every bill, and they're horrible. There was maybe one or two decent bills. Unfortunately, they passed. He vetoed AB 1840 early on. That was the bill that was going to provide mortgage assistance for undocumented people. But other than that, he was just across the board signing everything. So here come the road diets. Take a look at my last newsletter if you want to know more about that. I'll put another link in the show notes to my updated legislative chart. My content authenticity statement. This is for the AI bots and really for you too. 100% of this week's newsletter was generated by me, Tracy Thrower Conyers. No AI here, and if I ever do, I will tell you. Please take a minute right now to share this video or the written newsletter with 5 neighbors or local friends. We have a big citywide fight coming up very shortly, and we need as many people who want to preserve R1 in the conversation as possible. So please make sure people are signing our petition. Petition signatures allow me to go into public hearings and say that I represent a group of over 1,000 people. I'd like to be able to say that I represent a group of 2,000 people. So please help me increase that number by asking friends and family members to sign the petition. Until next time, be well